And the finance minister joins me now. Nice to see you, Minister.
It's a real pleasure to be with you.
You and the Prime Minister said this would be a generational budget, a transformational budget. You say it will bring in $1 trillion in investment over the next 5 years. Liberals have promised investment in the past, and it hasn't really manifested. What's different this time around? How is this budget different in terms of spurring investment?
Well, the choice of investments. I mean, you would see that when you invest in infrastructure, when you invest in housing, when you invest in competitiveness and productivity, that's the challenge that Canada has been facing, productivity for a long, long time. And with the budget measures we have, we didn't want to supercharge growth in this country. I mean, that's why I say it's a generational shift, because first of all, we say, we're going to balance the operating budget with revenues by 2028, 29. And then everything we'll borrow will be for capital growth, so making the investments to grow the economy. So even the International Monetary Fund, you may have seen, they said there's really 2 countries in the G7 who can do that. It's Germany and Canada. And the type of investments you make like that, those are generational in nature. And that's how you create more growth and more prosperity in the country.
What does that do to help Canadians right now? Canadians who are having a hard time paying rent, having a hard time buying groceries. What does this do right now?
Certainly. Well, 75% of what you've seen in the deficit is really, on one end, to have measures on affordability and the other one for our sovereignty. On affordability, measures in the budget, workers. If you're watching and you're in Oshawa or you're in Windsor, you say, it's really tough now. It's really tough for the industry. We need to support our workers. There's a number of measures to do that. There's a number of measures also for our youth, because they're facing higher unemployment that we've seen in a long time, to make sure that they get a chance to get that job. When they send that resume, that someone would answer the phone. We are making generational investment in housing, affordable housing. You say affordability for me often starts with a place to live that you can afford. So these are real measures to make sure that Canadians can go by now, but at the same time, having a vision towards the long term, because the world, the speed, scope, and scale of what we're seeing is quite unprecedented. People feel it in the field, at home, on the factory floor. And that's why we need to have this big pivot that we had since, last time, probably 1945.
$78 billion is the deficit. And that is without the trade war being resolved. And the talks with Donald Trump haven't restarted. What happens if that doesn't get resolved? What happens to those industries that are being hammered right now because of those tariffs that are still in place?
Well, we need to do what we say, and that's why you say we need to become our own best customers. We need to build one Canadian economy. We need to rebuild our infrastructure so we're not as much reliant on one particular country. We said we need to move from, reliance to resilience, to make sure that we have other trading partners around the world. And when I look at Canada compared to other nations, we are a magnet for talent. We have very strong industries. We have critical minerals. We have energy. We have a free trade with all the other G7 nations. And this budget is supercharging growth. Now, even if you look on the tax rate, we'll be more competitive than the United States, because one thing is to have measures to entice the private sector to invest more in Canada. Right. And that's why the infrastructure piece also will help, because municipalities will be able to go ahead with projects. Provinces, the same thing on mining and oil and gas. And that's why I think the role of the federal government is to provide these incentives to make sure that we attract this capital and grow our economy.
You're going to reduce the federal workforce by nearly 40,000 over 5 years. That is worrying to many Canadians who work in the public sector, and Canadians who are worried about the services and whether you're going to be able to deliver services if you get rid of that many workers.
Well, 2 things with that. The first one that I would say is that we need to bring back the size of the civil service to a more sustainable level. I think we've seen since COVID, the growth, and that's not sustainable. We need to get back to something that's more sustainable. We appreciate greatly the civil service. They do great things to deliver service for Canadians, but there's also new technologies that can help us to deliver better services, artificial intelligence processes. You've seen with the revenue agency when I asked them, let's improve to do better services. And I would say that when you look at the numbers in the budget, a fair amount of that is going to be to what we call normal attrition. People who retire, people who decide to go voluntarily. But I think it is tough, but we're going to be compassionate. We're going to be judicious in our choice, because I understand that behind that there's families, there's people. So we're going to be compassionate. But at the same time, I would say, Rosemary, Canadians have elected us to make tough choices and the right decision. We're going to be fair and compassionate in how we do that.
Okay, will you get it passed? Chris D'Entremont is now a Liberal MP, in case you hadn't heard.
I had a busy day, but I heard there's a lot of good things that happened today.
So that's 2 votes that you need. Are you confident that you'll get it passed?
Well, I would say there's something for every political party in that budget. You know, when you're talking, think about the health infrastructure.
Yeah.
For the first time, the federal government is saying, you know, we're going to help you with the hospitals, with the clinics. You know, Canadians face that. They said we need to modernize, revamp some of these facilities. So when they're going to make their final decision, they really have to say what they're going to say to their constituents. You know, think about the military. Are you going to say really to our armed forces that we should not be investing so they have the equipment and the technology? When you're looking at the NDP, even the Canadian Labour Congress said, you know, this is a budget that puts, workers at the heart of the economic strategy of the country. So I think there's a lot for these parties to reflect on, because it's not about themselves, by the way, it's about the people they represent. And going back to your constituent and say, you know what, we didn't support, for example, health infrastructure. We didn't really support our armed forces. We're not there when workers need it and pivot. This is a generational moment, and my message to Canadians: we're going to be okay. There's a lot of headwind, there's a lot of uncertainty, but we say this budget is to make sure that you, your family, your kids will have a future. We're going to grow our economy. We're going to do the things that we should have done for a bit of time, and now we're taking it and we're pivoting to make sure we are all going to be better off.
Got to leave it there. Thank you, Minister. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.